I just want to say that part of why I'm excited to have Nick here is that I realize it's been something like 11 or 12 years since we met at the Digital Arts and Culture Conference in Atlanta. And in 2003, Nick and I put out what was my first ever book, but not Nick's, by a slim margin, the New Media Reader. And since then, Nick has had a sort of remarkable record of production. Some of you who are in my class have been reading his Racing the Beam book that he wrote with Ian Bogost. He wrote Twisty Little Passages, which is kind of the landmark book about interactive fiction. He's also done quite a bit of artistic production, both on paper and for other media, including electronic media. And he is currently the president of the Electronic Literature Organization. And great to have somebody here who's such a multi-talented, interesting person. And I do want to point out that the project he's about to talk about has one of our own faculty members, Michael Matias, as a contributor, and also Jeremy Douglas, who will be coming to visit us later this academic year. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the talk. Take it away, Nick.
I want to thank the also very productive for the introduction, also for bringing me here. I should also give thanks to the combination of the UC quarter system and independent activities period at MIT, which allowed a longer visit than I otherwise could here. I'm going to talk about this one-line program that you see at the top here. And this is part of an ongoing project with a group currently, besides myself, including Patsy Badon, John Bell, Ian Bogus, Jeremy Douglas, Mark Marino, our very own Michael Matias, Casey Rees, Mark Sample, and Noah Vaughter. And actually, there will be guest appearances of some programs written by Warren Sack in my presentation. Work with us to think about new ways to approach this. What we're trying to do here is figure out what does it really mean to do code studies? As a sort of provocation, I thought, well, what if we had something that, for instance, people always like to look at comments, as you may remember from the UAE climate model controversy. People would go in and look at the comments, and as evidence, by someone saying like to do, put boundary checking on this, like they're like, oh, look at that climate change is a scam. Right? So people are, but it shows that people are actually looking at code, although often just at the comments and so on. But they're looking at code for political, social reasons. I mean, and there's broad discussion of it nowadays. And the question is, how do we understand computer programs that are of cultural significance? And I figured that if we couldn't understand a one-line program, it would be much harder to understand programs that are thousands of lines long. So why don't we start looking at this? If we're going to do software study that considers the code level, how can we understand that? And one of the reasons that I am so productive is that I collaborate with people like Noah, Michael, Warren, and so this group of people are working with me to try to create something that looks like and reads like a single author monograph, but is written more in the style of a Wikipedia article. Hopefully without the beads in your nose arguments and so on that happen on Wikipedia, but hopefully a little bit more focused than that type of opening. But let me start with a term, right? This is the subtitle of the talk here. Many authors explore creative computing through a short program. So I've talked about many authors in a short program. Let me mention creative computing and what I think that means. Probably not a startling concept to many people here at Santa Cruz who have contact with many sorts of computer programs that have expressive, cultural, other aspects. But nevertheless, what are some of these things? Well, I could be meaning, the actual magazine, Creative Computing, that ran through the late 1970s. And in fact, the stuff that they talk about in this magazine is very much creative computing, definitely. But I don't mean to restrict myself to this. I mean more broadly things like the production of indie games by Terry Kavanaugh, Zhao Zhao. The production of demos, right? These demo scene productions being works that are computer-generated audio-visual music videos, essentially. The production of art games, including, let's say, in this case, a simple ROM hack by Corey Archangel. This is Hogan's Alley, hacked into a game called I Shot Andy Warhol. You have to carefully pick out the one of these that's Andy Warhol avoiding, don't shoot the Pope or Colonel Sanders in this game. People doing laptop music and generative sound work, Super Collider, other systems like this, right? This is creative computing. Interactive fiction, of course, having a pretty well-established community, platforms that are available, work that goes forth, and an increasing number of books, thanks to people in this room who aren't taking. But there's also graphical adventures, right? That's part of what creative production and computing is, what creative computing is. Shoot 'em up's a very rich area. Work in visual art and electronic literature. This is a piece by John Maida. This is a piece by Casey Rees, who's a collaborator of ours on the current project, done in his and Ben Fry's processing system. And then, even physical computing that might do things like text generation. As well, there's things like the systems that children use, Storytelling Alice, but going back to Logo, Scratch, other systems that allow people to create unofficially and offhand in interesting ways. So there's actually a lot of examples of creative computing, and I didn't go into things like commercial video games here. I was just really talking about more individual computer production and more offhand and less organized ways. Of all of these things, we might ask why these things aren't studied very much or very well. Well, I would say that one of the reasons is that you need some type of understanding of computation code and the specifics of platforms and languages in order to deal with these artifacts that we're trying to study. But at the same time, we also have to have an understanding of art, culture, history, the methods of reading and interpretation. So institutionally, in many cases, people will look and say, oh, that's too technical for the humanities. That's not a good humanities problem to study creative computing. On the other hand, oh, there's this culture and history and art and stuff. That's not science or engineering. We won't study that. So it becomes something of a problem as to where this will be studied. MIT and Santa Cruz seems to be the answer to that question.